Hello there, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever you are. It's me, Addison, your favourite friendly furbog, who hangs around the internet, and we are back for another episode of the Pod of Many Things, the start of Season 3, and in case you haven't noticed, things have changed. Obviously the layout's going to change over time, I'm going to mess about a bit, but we have faces. You get to see my lovely beard every now and then, and you get to see my lovely guest too. And today we're joined by my personal favourite, lovable vagabond, Luke P. How you doing, Luke?
Hey man, I'm good. Well, thank you. I listen to an enormous amount of podcasts, but this will be my first guest appearance.
Yeah, good. I'm glad that I can say that I started your illustrious career of using your silky smooth voice on the airways. But yeah, so Luke, tell the people about yourself before we dive into today's theme of being in the Mindpalace, rogues, the grey area, and stuff like that.
It's an absolute pleasure. To say really, well, I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons on and off for a while. I want to say my first ever experience with the game was I was 15, 16, playing in like secondary school. We'll go into more detail about this, but then I had an enormous gap, and D&D. I'm a person who jumps between hobbies a great deal, but sometimes some of them will stick. D&D was definitely one of these ones that stuck for me, and you just think about it, you think, man, that'd be good to get back to. Ended up playing with you, and that was obviously excellent. And then jump ahead, I didn't have any RPG experience for a long time, until I got sick of doing that, and I decided to run Call of Cthulhu. And I found that Call of Cthulhu has been a really lovely fit for me, and I found that I thoroughly enjoy being the storyteller and being able to build these experiences for people. And I'm now getting involved with the community and heading forward and trying to get, do a bit more of my kind of writing and moving into other games. Like I'm looking at Vampire the Masquerade, I'm looking at 7th Sea, I'm looking at, of course, Dungeons and Dragons. But yeah, that's what I'd say. That's the best kind of brief summary I can give.
And what social media are you doing to like keep up with this and because you need social media apparently if you're going to be anything to do with TTRPGs, right? That's a thing.
That is very true. I'm live on Instagram, my newly created Instagram, which is at Keeper Arcane.
Oh, nice. I did like the name of that when I saw it follow me. I was like, yeah, that's such a you name. And
Took a minute.
I think that like the system's Call of Cthulhu and like maybe 7th Sea. No, 7th Sea definitely. Like from what I know of you and like having you at my table and stuff are like systems that will definitely like fit into your like tastes. And like Vampire the Masquerade I think is a definite one because you're like our very own Sherlock Holmes, and like that there's a pun in that because of like what you used to do. I don't know if you still do it
I firmly still do it.
Yeah, and then
I've my career in that regard is I don't want to go too much into it because it's not relevant, but like I am firmly still involved.
Yeah, and then just you are like a real life kind of like lovable rogue, and I love that about you, like because you've got that charisma of the legendary pirates of like, and then you've got like that wit of like Moriarty behind it as well. Like you and we'll talk about like Mordai later, but like when I was introduced to you as Mordai in that sense, I was like, oh my god, this guy knows this like niche. I loved that about you and like what you do. So
I've never and I never will forget Mordai. He holds a very special place in my heart.
Yeah, so if we dive into that first then, so you said about like, we'll talk about like TTRPGs first and like your experience with them. So you said that you had quite a gap between when you were like 15, 16.
Yeah, huge gap. So my friends in secondary school, we played S03.5, I remember it was. And I remember, and back then, my focus in TTRPGs, the reason I go, the reason I engage with them, is I'm firmly in camp. The focus should be on the characters and the story. Gameplay, it's like I'm very rules light when I run Call of Cthulhu. Games like Seventh Sea and Vampire Masquerade are almost written to be rules light. But Seventh Sea has people could just directly alter the narrative as because they're players. They have a mechanic where if your player is doing an investigation, they can announce, "Oh, I've learned that this church is smuggling contraband," which is something you might not have written as the guy controlling the story, but it's in the world now. Back then, I've always gone in with a very clear idea of it was always character first, even if sub-optimized, especially if sub-optimized. we played very casually. It was, I don't know, every couple of weeks, and I just remember thoroughly enjoying Game to the Head. I played a sorcerer, and then because we had a lot of mages, I transitioned to rogue. Transitioned to monk, because I remember we did a heist. The last boss in the heist was a monk. I just watched as this human was sprinting across the map.
just
pinballing all of us. And I was like, what the hell is this? How do I learn how to do this?
It's when in the games when Sonic just bounces from enemy to enemy, like
it was Rock Lee dropping his leg weight. Behind us, it's like I thoroughly enjoyed that, and then that kind of just. I remember I never ran games, but I remember hosting a couple of them. That then kind of just fizzled out. I don't entirely remember why. I had big break where I had university and everything. I didn't really do it during uni, which is a huge missed opportunity because
you had time.
I had time. That's precisely it. I had a society. There's loads I could have gone to. I didn't hit my. I didn't hit my stride until after uni, and I'm fine with that. Then, when I was living back in Kettering, I found our humble and very well organised RPG group, and I fell in with you guys, and it was the perfect return to form. It ticked all the boxes. Everyone was really nice. It ran well. It was consistent. Had a full arc. I got to play a nice character, and yeah, it's still up there. Best D&D, best kind of long form campaign I've played.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I've actually, funnily enough, before speaking to you, Luke T was at our house. So Luke T was at our house talking to me about stuff and everything, and yeah, I was just remembering all the things I remember Mordai and remembered Mordai. I remembered our friend Claire's character, and I feel like Mordai was the perfect window into your way of thinking because of how he was that charming rogue. Yeah, charming rogue, hedonistic, but even though he's willing to sell everybody out, he has a strong code of ethics. There are things he won't do. Yeah.
I think when you have a character like that, you've got to give them lines, because if anything, that helps with roleplay and it helps with writing the character, because it gives them obstacles to work around. I think there is a PhD waiting to be written about what kind of people make what kind of characters. I've found in kind of just anecdotal experience, people who are very good with numbers. When I used to play 3.5, all my friends who studied maths and sciences, they played mages.
Yeah,
and
they've got dice to keep track of.
Yeah, and and it's interesting because I think I pretty firmly walk the straight and narrow in my life. I don't go out much. I sort of, I like my home comfort, like my creature comforts. But when I got to play Mordai, it's such a nice. I think you get this with Empire as well. It's such a nice way to look into darker aspects of your personality. The best way of making a character is to take parts of yourself and blow them up to 100. With Mordai, it was just a case. It was looking at what things in other characters do I find exciting. Like I was reading Lies of Locke Lamora at the time, and I've always loved on-artist characters because I've always loved characters who can stay that one step ahead, who can play the move so they're always a little bit ahead, but they barely even know it. The enemies certainly don't know it. And I wanted a character who had that kind of chessboard view of everything. I've taken that in my most recent D&D experience. I finally got to play a investigator who was... I really like that character. He was seriously bright, and the way I kind of paid off the normal low constitution you get with a rogue is I went his backstory and I was like, yeah, he's been poisoned. He was poisoned as a kid. And so he's weakened, but he's realized really early he can't rely on his body. So he's had to look to kind of sharpening the mind. I think every kind of character people make is drawn from their own experience. It's drawn from the things you admire. I think it can be drawn from things you find distasteful as well, because they can. Like Mordai, I think as a person would be if you'd hate him if you met him, because he just plays everyone. He views people like tools, but he grows and he learns and he stops being just a spoiled rich kid, and I think that's why I liked him, because the campaign was such a good fit. This character who had fallen from grace, been stabbed in the back so many times, to move on from that and try and be open and try and be a bit more in the light. And yeah, your campaign really, really helped facilitate that.
No, I think I think that like that's true. Like Mordai had like one of the best arcs in that thing, even though he came in quite late. So, like, for those of you who don't know, like, at one point I ended up DMing for, like, 12 to 13 people. Because, like, people just kept turning up. And I was like, yeah, sure. Because I wanted people to like me. And then, so...
Anything else, like any other skill, you got to get your hours in.
Yeah.
The more hours you do, the better you will get at it.
Yeah. And then, so... Mordai started off as this like spoiled rich kid rogue who thought that the party could like get him somewhere or get him something that he needed in order to go home as like the conquering hero of like some sort of like challenge.
Noble house. He wanted to come back as the prodigal son, and he wanted to come back with something to show for it. And then
he grew into like he met some people like my wife's character Dara, I think, had quite
Dara and whatever Troy's character was called, the Tortle.
Yeah, Toke. Like these two like
Toke, yes.
Yeah, these two like. So Toke was a cleric of
divination.
He's a divination wizard, but he was like a change bringer, like worshipper, because his character's thing was about fate, and he was just like really naive, wasn't he? And he was just like saw the best in everybody, and then
he was so sort of honest and straight talking. There was never any deception that came out of him, and for Mordai, that was just an interesting person to meet a person who doesn't have an agenda.
Yeah,
and it held up a bit of an ugly mirror for him, I think.
And then there was Dara, my wife's character, who was a wood elf cleric. She was the cleric, sorry. And she'd only just left home, very sheltered, and like was like, I feel like her kind of seeing everything for the first time was like really nice for Mordai, like, because it hadn't been. I always felt like in Mordai's eyes, some things had been tainted, and then when
Dara was such a sort of. It's such a sort of like Bambi in the woods character, and for a person like Mordai, that's most refreshing, because the rest of our party were all pretty battle scarred and bloodstained.
Yeah, like
we had a lot of avenging warriors. We had a lot of people going out there and doing stuff for the divines, and it was a case of having this sort of innocent party involved.
Yeah, like. I'm just here. Like kind of like I'm just here, and like
Just tagging along.
and I thought, and then Mordai kind of like became better, and like you did like this fantastic send off, like you wrote a letter to them because obviously you moved away during the time, so you did like this
penultimate session. I wasn't there for the last one,
so you like disappeared into the eternal house of Shah, a hero, like I can do this, I don't. And yeah, it was just really really good, and I think that's why I wanted to talk to you about the idea of like rogue characters, that grey area of like the liminal between good and evil, and like the almost like the Sherlock Holmes-esque character where sometimes they do terrible things for the right reason, or they do like the right thing in a terrible way, because they think it's what needs to be done. And then like also I wanted to speak to you about mystery, because I also felt like Mordai was kind of like a mystery wrapped in an enigma. Like it was really
layers. Yeah, I remember like no one at the party knew about his various tragic backstory.
Yeah,
I distinctly remember one instance where he was talking to Toke, and Toke was talking about his family, and Mordai was like, "Yeah, that must be nice." And everyone at the table simultaneously rolled insight. And of course, my deception was through the roof. So they couldn't tell anything.
Yeah, it was just like because you on purposely guarded it. Like a lot of people would have been like, "Yeah, incite me because I want the opportunity to monologue about my backstory, etc., etc." But like you played that as Mordai would be, and it's like, yeah, you don't get this, like you won't get this unless you really work for it.
It's not how people talk.
Yeah,
it's how I talk. I tend to divulge everything in the first 5 minutes of meeting people.
Yeah.
I'll focus in on Sherlock Holmes first, because Sherlock Holmes is a special interest of mine, borderline fixation of a growing book collection, and me, because you had Sherlock Holmes, who was a character who has existed and has remained popular for almost 200 years at this point.
Yeah.
You do have to wonder what it is about that character, and I think it is because he is one of the reasons. One of the more general reasons I really like is because Sherlock Holmes as a character represents a world where problems can be solved from the comfort of your armchair. Represents a world where reason ultimately prevails, and if you think hard enough about something, the answer will reveal itself to you. And we live in increasingly complicated and multifaceted times with effects that roll through centuries, and there isn't much we can do about them, so there's a great deal of comfort there. I think he, as you said, he's also a character who's very, very hard to pin down. It's contradictory even in the canon.
Yeah.
In one book, he'll talk about how it's all just data, it's all just cases, it's all just numbers, it's all just energy, it's all just stuff fighting through. In other cases, he gets personally invested. There's one where, like, no crime has been committed. This man has humiliated his fiancée, and Holmes threatens to, like, beat him with a riding crop unless he leaves.
Yeah.
And there's like the Blue Carbuncle, he lets a thief go because he understands if this guy goes to jail, he'll come out worse. And so it's this, he's a very, and that's why there have been so many different interpretations of the character. He's difficult to pin down. His motives are difficult to pin down. And a lot of the sort of, not much in the canon, but in the pastiches, in further works, you get a lot more in the lines of Holmes is actually a deeply, deeply emotional person. He has to guard it, and he has to put up this front, and he has to detach himself. He talks about, there are some books I've read where he'll arrive at a crime scene, and he'll be initially like aghast and horrified, and then Watson just describes the kind of cold mask just asserting itself, and suddenly he's just tools. He's just a mind that's working on these scenes.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely those things where it's either
all or nothing.
All emotion, like vengeance and like retribution, or it is like robot-esque, like I'm going to scan everything.
Detachment.
Cold. And that's where you get those moments, even in like some of his famous stories in the canon, like Hound of the Baskervilles, where he's he doesn't tell people things that would actually help them a great deal, and like he doesn't share everything with John that would help to crack the case sooner. If John would help, and like some people argue if that makes him a good person and whether he's doing. It's really complicated.
I think it's delicious that people argue that Sherlock Holmes is like an emotionless, passionless character when you have a person who will actively inconvenience themselves so they can have a dramatic reveal later. So you can get everyone together to sort of broaden the scope a little. I would firmly put Sherlock Holmes in kind of a roguish category. I think also in rogues in general, I think humans have always been attracted to. This is a little bit, you see this in my bio, I think humans have always been attracted to the macabre. We're always attracted to shadows, and we're always attracted to the things in grey. You only have to look at the history of like Gothic romance and literature. You got things like Phantom of the Opera, Dracula, Count of Monte Cristo. You have these stories about people who are driven to do very, very dark things. There is an appeal to that. People who are consumed by their passions and by their obsessions, and it takes them to dark places. Rogues in Dungeons and Dragons are a way for people to, in other RPGs, that archetype.
Yeah.
Ways for people to explore, I think, frustrations with the system and frustrations with the way their world is structured. And it's like, okay, here are the rules of society. I don't want to play by these rules. I'm going to play as a character who actively subverts these rules, whether that be conning people, stealing, murdering for money. And I think it also, in a gameplay perspective, it boils down to, like when you're playing Splinter Cell or Metal Gear Solid or any stealth game, it's very satisfying when whoever you're after walks into your net.
Yeah.
And you get that moment, and you get your sneak attack, and you get to roll all the dice and get the damage. And I think that is a very appealing thing to rogue players. I think, just thinking like the average rogue player is intelligent, good-looking.
Yeah. Like Han Solo is everybody's favorite in Star Wars. Like,
absolutely,
we turn around and go, Luke is the hero of Star Wars. However, if we think about it, Han Solo is everybody's favorite.
It's everyone's favorite character.
Yeah. If we look at even like other things, like think about it. I'm thinking about this now. I'm like, there's so many.
Look at any anime.
Yeah,
you have your shonen, upstanding protagonist, and then you have their dark, edgy friend.
Yeah, Sasuke.
Everyone loves.
And Sasuke.
You have fucking your Sasuke, and you have your characters who are going to backstab. Are going to backstab the main character.
Yeah.
I think it's also really interesting in bigger stories where you have characters who are very, very good at what they do, and who have a very, very upstanding things, are willing to do very, very dark things to get to that point.
Yeah,
and will do dark stuff.
Yeah, it's like there's a sick satisfaction if you've played. I'm guessing you've played the game Dishonored. Yeah, like the game Dishonored, there is a sick satisfaction you get of being that badass assassin and going around and just murdering all your targets and everybody who gets in your way to get there, and you're doing it for the right reason. And even though now we know that, like, at the time when it first came out, terribly. Yeah, it ends terribly. Like, we still kind of have that satisfaction, and we still go, well, Corvo's the good guy, even though he murdered tens of thousands of people per level.
Also, I know gripe about Dishonored. If I use a spell that disintegrates people's bodies, that shouldn't count towards the bad ending. That's for a 10-year-old game, I guess.
We'll circle back to that. But yeah, no, I think that there is, of being a rogue, like Captain Jack Sparrow, like, I know that's a controversial thing at the minute, is beloved by people, even though he is technically at one point the antagonist in a lot of the situations.
We're drawn to characters who walk the line, and I think that's because it makes them very interesting as you try and figure out what side of the line they're on.
Yeah. And
rogues really feed into that, the idea of you have this person who's on your side, but for how long? There's a character in Codex Alera, one of my favorite fantasy book series, which I absolutely adore. He's a wonderful character, and he's a mercenary, and in the first book he's an antagonist. Then later on, they just pay him more, and he's on the good guy's side now. And it's just that's charming in a way because it's like, here's my moral compass. Which way do you want it to swing?
Yeah, I feel that way about. Did you ever play Final Fantasy 12?
No.
Final Fantasy 12 is the main character is called Vaan, and he's your stereotypical like Final Fantasy teenage protagonist thief character, and he meets the sky pirate Balfir. And Balfir is everybody's favorite because even he, almost like breaking the fourth wall, goes, well, I'm the leading man, comes in, swagger jacks in with his skyship, his co-pilot's like this 6 foot tall Amazonian bunny girl thing, called Fran, and
sounds like a JRPG.
Yeah, and he just comes in as like at all times is like, well, I'm the leading man, or there's only room for... He steals every scene, and he's the gunslinger, because again, those rogues gunslinger-esque types, like cowboys and stuff, we just love them. And I think in TTRPGs especially, because I think the rogue also, and the rogue archetypes in D&D, and you can say this for the same things in like Cthulhu, like the player choices and options in Cthulhu. They're so flavoursome. There's so much you can get your teeth into. Like me playing a mastermind rogue in D&D is very different from playing the assassin class of rogue.
When I sat down and had a real look at the concepts behind rogue, speaking specifically about Dungeons and Dragons, there is so much the view of rogues are a toolbox.
Yeah.
And the rogues are specialists, and they're good at a short list of things, but they're really good at those things.
Yeah.
They have so many points to pile into various just utilities, lockpicking, sneak, assassination, just the tools that come with Mastermind. I think Rogue is lovely because it gives you such a deep toolbox that you can use in RP, and you can use in your story, and you can use in combat. I think generally also we're very attracted to anti-heroes, and we're very attracted to... You have to look at the popularity of characters like the Punisher, Deadpool, Wolverine, who aren't good people by any stretch. Or, Guts from Berserk. None of them are good people by any stretch of the imagination, but they've always had soft spot for anti-heroes, and I think it's because it's satisfying in a morbid way, and I think we'll talk more about morbid fascination when we talk about mystery in general. But
I think as well, and I don't know, this might be just me being funny and memeing for the conversation's sake, but I also think when we make a rogue, and when we make a deeply flawed character, so in Cthulhu, when you make someone who's going after these abominations, or setting into these abomination elder god-esque situations, there's almost that I can fix him mentality that you have as a player. I can fix him, mum. I can fix him. I love him.
People design OCs with flaws. You hope inevitably so they come through to those flaws and they get past them. Give up my own kind of... I have an original character, May North, who's a supernatural detective, and she is... I'm kind of rewriting the first draft. In the first book, she is obsessive and weird. Mm-hmm. She doesn't sleep much, and she hasn't gone outside in a while. And her arc is... Part of it is almost, as she's solving this mystery, is reintegrating herself into society. Mm-hmm. Talking about Call of Cthulhu more generally, I'm playing with partner Lilia, who's the first time doing a tabletop RPG. She's so good at it. She has...
Aren't those people annoying?
Aren't they just? But she has such a wonderful understanding of character, and she has such a great understanding of making bad choices for roleplay. And her character is great because she's a journalist, and in Call of Cthulhu, if you start getting curious, you're going to go insane, or worse.
You're going to look into the eye of something at some point.
By contrast, my brother's character, Eugene, would like to be kept out of all of this stuff, please and thank you, and he does stuff because Ellie asks, because it's to help someone out. or to like, fulfill a death wish or something. It has to be these big reasons. Ellie will just do it for curiosity and to go chase a story. And those flaws to me are great to use because I can like give her, oh hey, here's just a book. Don't worry about it. Read it. And it's just, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, no,
of course. You could just give tools and you could just let them run off with it and give your characters pause. You give yourself more to play with, and you give the person running your game more to have fun with.
When I design characters, one of the first things I go for, like a lot of people are like, who are their parents and everything, and I think one of the main things I've always done is my first thing is the Greek tragic concept of the fatal flaw. It's like my favorite thing in the world. So
their downfall.
Yeah, like so. The two characters I'm working on at the moment. There's obviously Kindling Prigby, who's my Fire Genasi, like war wizard, who's been a D&D character, and he's evolved into like this novel character who is like basically been raised to be a weapon, and his fatal flaw turns out to be self-loathing that I don't think he even understands. Like he doesn't understand how deprecative he is to himself, or deprecating, he is to himself. Like the fact that he has a wife who is not of the same race as him, and is and he's constantly afraid of hurting her, even though he's never done so in his life. Like he doesn't want to have children because of the experience that he had growing up, and he doesn't even realize that's what it is. He's just like, well, I'm doing it because it's just for the best. Like I move around.
Doesn't think he can be anything more than what he's been raised as.
And like one of and then the other one I have is actually like this werewolf blacksmith guy who his fatal flaw is actually stoicism. Like he is unfeeling and unflinching even when people are hurting him, because he believes like I could hurt anyone at any point if I wanted to. Like so I'm not allowed to like lose my temper. Like so like the story that he's in is actually really interesting. I've realized that in my like weird Marvel Universe-esque planning for my like story series, I've made like a bunch of like, so Kindling's story is like a fantasy murder mystery. Like why did this person kill this person? But then Kessig's is this weird like almost like Jane Austen-esque romance novel. I've just like kind of went, what would he do if someone was like really interested in him? Like, and like he's like, they're like, I don't really feel anything. Like I don't know. And then like hopefully opening him up to that. So I'm like, I feel like fatal flaws and flaws in general, like, make some of these characters, like roguish characters, these grey characters, even more human than like some of the people we see in real life. Like because we understand them. Like we
absolutely, and they're often flaws that are exaggerated, or they're often flaws that could only kind of exist in a fantasy world. Like I remember my most recent Inquisitor rogue. He was deeply obsessive. Like he got attacked by a mind flayer. To my character, whose brain is everything, have someone go into your head and screw with you through your mind. He became like fixated, and just all of his free time he was researching, how do I find and kill a mind flayer?
How do I find, kill a mind flayer, protect my mind, and
how do I mount it on my wall? And speaking about kind of characters, for me, I think when it comes to characters, I tend to do characters first, and like when I design an RPG, it's one of the reasons why I prefer point-buy systems for character creation and like roll for stats, because when I make a character, I have an idea in mind. I have a hook. I know what kind of character I want to make. Then if I roll garbage on like intelligence or charisma, it's like, oh, I guess I just won't make that character then.
Yeah, you want everything to be very deliberate.
Yeah, and I have my character comes first, and I'll do stats, and I'll figure out the details for their stats later. And with general character creation, that's how it works. I have a hook, and my first kind of thoughts are, right, what's this character's hook? What's their one-line selling point? And if like Mordai, it would be something like compulsive gambling con man.
Yeah.
Or John Constantine with horns. It'd be something like that.
Yeah.
Or and with May, it's like supernatural detective who walks this line between worlds, and with go back to like Call of Cthulhu and various NPCs and stuff, and looking ahead to like what kind of characters do I want to make in Vampire the Masquerade. Like I've got a character in my head called Triton. Triton is a really interesting character because he's just so aggressively antisocial, which is something I've never been in my life.
No, I can imagine that would be amazing to see you do.
Yeah, but it's nice to have a character who just doesn't care. It's really satisfying, and it can be very fulfilling in a way to have a character who is not only not playing by the rules, is just purely not interested in them.
I'm ignoring them.
Yeah, and they don't even consider anything like that, and those have consequences, and that is a flaw. That is not a good quality for a person to have, and it makes them difficult to work with. But it allows, talking about like why do people do make characters? It allows you to explore parts of yourself.
Yeah, definitely, and that's one of the reasons I like rogues. Like I've not played many. Like I've played 2. I've played Biggs Alphonse, who was a kobold rogue mastermind. He was on purposely like little man syndrome. Like everyone underestimates me. His fatal flaw was pride. Like he was going to build the single largest criminal empire the world has ever seen. Like, I will rise to the top, and there is nothing that will stop me. Like, and then the other one was more an NPC. You met him quite a lot. I don't think Mordai liked him a lot, mind you. Was Freedom Walker, Captain Freedom Walker?
Freedom Walker is alright. He had his own thing. Mordai just can't deal with another person thinking they're the smartest one in the room.
Yeah, he is the captain of a ship called the Flying Leviathan, and he was just like, I love myself, and that's fine. Like, and you can love me too. Was pretty much his. If we're talking about that hook line thing you were talking about, his
not going anywhere. I'm just turning on a light because it's getting dark quick.
That's all right.
Yeah, right. This is a professional recording.
Yeah, so it's fine. But yeah, the idea of hooks like freedoms was like, I love myself and you can love me too. But don't try and pin me down, because the minute you try and put me in a box or a cage or anything like that, like things are going to go terribly for you. He was really interesting, because also as well, like there's something inherently like about those characters as well. Like people love Sherlock and stuff. Like there's something sexy about their minds, isn't there? Like.
Yeah, and
they're innately hot. Like Mordai was innately hot, like just because of how like eloquent he was. Like, and it wouldn't have mattered. I don't think it would have mattered if he was a tiefling. I know we associate tieflings with being hot, but like, I think if he'd have been a human, like, I would have wanted to. Like,
I love tieflings. I love tieflings because not a lot of people do this in campaigns, and I get why, because it can make it difficult for players. But I love tieflings because they've got this mixed bloodline. I like playing humans. I like playing a human. I get humans. Like playing tieflings because I think it's interesting to have characters who are in this almost fairy tale. Because I always classify Dungeons and Dragons as fantasy with a capital F.
Yeah,
like, it's really high fantasy. I'm more personally. I'm reading the Wheel of Time now, which I am enjoying. But personally, I'm more into like grounded urban stories. Like
you did mention the Lies of Lochmore, yeah.
Yeah, and like, but maybe that's because I've not read enough of it. But yeah, it's fantasy with a capital F. So it's almost like fairy tale. And to have this race where it's like, now people will just spit on you in the street, and
yeah.
it's just.
I like that about tieflings. Like, I agree with
there's
you.
an aspect in rogues we've not touched on, which is I think a lot of them are associated with a deep love of freedom.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's a good point. That's a really good point. That's one of the reasons why freedom is called freedom. Like his name is Freedom Walker, because of the fact that his main thing in life is to be liberated, to not be held down by anything, and to make his own rules. And
That is more generally, I think, an appeal of pirates, which people have held a fascination with for hundreds of years. It's this life so far detached from social decorum, and it's going out there, and you're completely at the mercy of the elements, and it's just you against the back, or, against the sea, and people around you, and taking what you need, and you're living in anarchy, well, kind of soft democracy, depending on what sources you read of what pirate life is like. There's a real appeal to that, and I think if you look more generally at thief characters and even assassin characters, there is that freedom of them feeling and being above the law.
Yeah, like you look at like the gangster, the mobster, like the untouchability of the like old school Italian mobster in fiction, and like they're just untouchable. Like the rules that you and me abide by do not apply to them, etc. And I think it's the same thing there as like with pirates. Like the rules that you hold and you have do not apply to me. Do not try and apply them to me. And I think
there's such a difference in as how you tell this story, because you can tell the story and you can focus on this liberation, and you can focus on the joy of being separate from these rules and structure of society, or you could look from the perspective of the people who are under these laws and structures. Suddenly you have people who don't want to play the game, and now you're being exploited. And are they it's very easy to make lawbreakers the hero if the laws are unjust. If the laws are just and they are sustaining a society that works generally for people, and stops people from starving and keeps the roads paved, and suddenly it's like, oh great, well I worked 12 hours today so I could feed my family, and you've just stolen all my money, and suddenly they're the villains. And I think a big part of freedom, having a character who is removed from social niceties and laws, is in itself a flaw, because these structures are in place for a reason. Not everybody. It's very easy for us to dislike a character who is very hard on laws and rules. The best example is going to be someone like Javert from Les Mis, the codified, lawful, neutral character. The law is the highest thing.
Yeah.
If you look from his perspective and you take a look at the kind of world he was inhabiting, you can't trust anything except the letter of the law. And you can hold that up and you can say, look, this is how it should be. We need to have this in here, or else there's nothing. We can't make exceptions, or else it all would be exceptions.
Yeah, it's kind of like that with Phantom as well. Like if you look at like Phantom of the Opera, like he believes in nothing but music and like the laws of the theatre and stuff like that. And
I hate that story. He's just a murderer.
Yeah,
there's nothing redeeming about that character.
He has nothing to redeem about him, but like it's that again, that thing of like in his mind, because he doesn't see what's going on outside as something that is fair. Like he's the hero of his story.
Yeah,
however,
it's a world
when you look at him,
want to be a part of.
Yeah, and when you look at him though, you realise that he's the villain. Like you're definitely the villain, because these people really haven't done anything wrong. Like
no, they just it's an opera, dude. Calm down.
Yeah.
It's these stories like Count of Monte Cristo. It's these stories of people who are so drowned by their passions that they hold them higher and their own lives and the lives of other people. And those stories can be heroic with a character like Batman, or could be dark and obsessive and violent, and could also be turned into romance, because as you said, these kind of characters, going back of these mentally sharp and mentally cold characters, attractive. People have been attracted to Sherlock Holmes since he's existed. And a more contemporary example of Spock. Like, it's well known that Kirk is written as the ladies' man, but a lot of women were attracted to Spock because everyone wants to be the person who breaks through that icy facade.
Yeah, like again, that idea of I can fix him. Like I can.
Yeah, and it's this appeal of not. And we like characters who don't show their whole hand, and characters who are keep a few things close to the chest because it makes them intriguing. If we know, like I love Luke Skywalker as a character, and I think if you take a character like Luke, he's got everything on the table. You know exactly what he's thinking, what he's up to. Han, even towards the end of the movies, even towards like in the original trilogy, if you watch them with fresh eyes, you think like, I don't actually know what side this guy's playing. He seems real keen to run off at every opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, he's like, oh yeah, we can't win. Like he's the negative one. He's the realist of the group. Like
Absolutely.
Luke's this like hopeful, young, like yeah, and then Han's out there like, no, I've been out in the galaxy.
Force doesn't exist. Yeah.
Like I've been out in the galaxy, kid. Like don't fucking tell me how to live my life. And I think these characters heavily. And let's try and make this segue work. Heavily fit into that idea of the mystery and like the enigma, and like I'm gonna say like deep lore, because like in like the Cthulhu stories, we know the Cthulhu mythos quite well, and like they're not really mysteries. It's more about like when are they gonna find out? Like when is this character gonna find out that actually there's this world behind ours, filled with filled with things that you could never understand, like the King in Yellow, and like
find quite odd. I don't quite know how to describe it. I find an immense comfort in the Cthulhu mythos. I find that there is something very, very comforting because there is a certain liberty and hopelessness. Things can't get 101% ruined. I think it's weird because I love mystery stories. I write them, I read a great deal of them. You get people who their number one genre they read is like fantasy, it's sci-fi, it's young adult fiction, it's romance. I read basically whatever I can get my hands on, whatever interests me. If I had to pick a genre, it would be mystery. And I think it is almost textbook how to write a story. Have your problem, have your star, and they're going to get to the solution. And if it's, I don't think all mysteries have to be fair play. You don't all have to be able to solve them from reading them. I think those are really nice, but especially with like the urban fantasy genre and supernatural genre, you don't quite get that because you can't give all the rules. Talk about the Cthulhu mythos. There is the fact that if the more you know, the more kind of damned you are, and the idea that it is all inherently unknowable, and that's where the horror comes from. As someone, and speaking from a gameplay perspective, when you run Call of Cthulhu and if you're doing a scenario, you are given, as the keeper, a huge amount of information about what the players are up against. I will read all of this and I'll internalize it and I'll be like, great, this is what they're up against. Here's what's happened. Then you play through the scenario. They could discover every clue. They're not going to figure everything out.
Yeah.
Not going to learn all the mysteries because that's not how it works. And it's really interesting because you know the mystery, you know the twist. And so when you just drop like these little like intrigue hooks, watching players react is so satisfying. Like in one of the recent ones I did, the one called Dead Man Stomp, which is about a trumpet that's bringing people back to life. I'm running it with people, and they're at this parade, and the music starts, and suddenly this thing in the coffin just lurches, and my players are just thinking like, "Oh Jesus Christ!" And it's like so interesting to drop these kind of moments, drop these lines, and just hear them go like, "What?" And it's like they may not ever figure that out, and I think it draws people in, it draws their characters in. Call of Cthulhu is a lovely game. Learn how to run. It's dirt simple. It's all basic role playing, so it's all just it's all just 2d10 or 1d100. And if you are a mystery lover, if you like the Cthulhu mythos, you don't need to sort of know it all to understand it. It helps to understand its themes, and it helps to understand that this is firmly a play-to-lose game. The best case scenario is your character will come out unscathed. Never going to be the hero. I like to describe Call of Cthulhu as Dungeons and Dragons, but nerdier, because it's like in D&D. Yes, I've made my elf fighter who was raised to be a soldier and is struck out to go understand the world. And in Call of Cthulhu, it's I've made an accountant named Tim, and it's just and Tim is going to go insane later. It's just,
Tim has. It's like one of those weird adverts, like Tim has accidentally found the Necronomicon.
Tim has absolutely cracked open the Necronomicon, and his eyes are melting out of his face.
Yeah, he accidentally read The King in Yellow, and now The King in Yellow is here. Like,
mystery, I think, is a lovely genre, and I think mystery is difficult. It's difficult to write. I can tell you that much. It's hard to write. It's hard to write a compelling mystery because you know the answers. And I think it is difficult to role play and it's difficult to run in a game. The simple reason that you need to trust your players to figure it out. And you need your players to be okay if they don't get all the answers. Lilia is terrible at this. Whenever we finish a scenario, she will be like, show me the book. I want to know what it was.
I want to know what we missed. I want to know what we
Yeah, exactly. And I don't mind because the scenario's done and because she doesn't metagame. It's almost a flaw in the system is that your players and your characters will inevitably become aware of, if we get called into something, we know there's going to be something going on. It's a question of what form is the mythos going to take. My advice in Call of Cthulhu is every now and again just run a scenario where nothing happens.
Yeah.
Just have a scenario where they go to a cafe and everything's fine, just to like keep the tension going.
Yeah, because they'll be there like, hang on, where's
roll spot hidden on the soup, and it's just stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, they like jump at like this man comes towards you. What? Like
it's Nyarlathotep. I knew it.
Yeah, no, it's the waiter. He's coming to give you your bill. You've got to go now. We're closing.
Cthulhu mythos is so interesting. Cthulhu and that genre of horror. It's so fascinating because Lovecraft died unknown, died penniless. He'd been published in pulp novels, but he'd built up such a horrific racism aside. He'd built up such a rich, detailed mythos and such a captivating idea of what if the horror was that it just didn't care about you? What if the scary thing about Cthulhu wasn't that he'll crush you, it's that he won't even notice he's done it. Like, do you register when you stepped on an ant? You care? No. Why should these things care? They're not evil. They're not good. They're not evil. They just exist. Occasionally, humanity is in the way.
Yeah.
And the game is a wonderful thing. There's a spell you can get, which I think is Summon Hound of Tyndalos, to these monstrous beasts that roamed the earth before humans were there. They can travel through time. If you make contact with one, they'll find you. It may take them like days, but they can just run through time and they can appear in corners. They come out of like tight corners. And my favorite thing about this spell, it gives you the technique to summon it, and then next to it, it says, no one has ever managed to bind a Hound of Tyndalos. No one knows how it's done. So if you summon it, it will just attack you and leave.
I quite like in the Cthulhu mythos that idea of also like Batman says it to at quite a lot of times. He says like when you stared into the abyss and the abyss stared back, you blinked. But one of the things I love about the Cthulhu mythos is you stare into the abyss and the abyss turns its back. Like, it just does not care. It does not love you. You cannot advance. Like, you are... You so chase
much I
it.
love. So much I love about the gameplay mechanics in Call of Cthulhu and how they hammer home the themes. Sanity is a huge part of Call of Cthulhu. It is a resource like magic, like HP. If you lose more than 5 sanity in one go, you suffer something called a Bout of Madness, which is like an uncontrollable action for a certain amount of time. And so let's say you take more than 5 HP, you can then roll an intelligence check, and you want to fail this check. Because let's say you've seen this shambling horror, this dimensional shambler rip its way out of a void in space-time. And you are suddenly aware that there are universes beyond ours, and that we are just pinpricks of light in this great void of blackness. That's everything that comes crashing down on your mind. Roll your intelligence check. If you fail, congratulations. You managed to compartmentalize it. You managed to just push it down. You managed to explain it as something else. Like you go, that dog's sick, or like whatever. If you pass it, you are fully aware of what you are seeing, and it all hits you.
Yeah.
And get various effects. Lilia's character Ellie had her first bout of madness after like a nightmare that was being triggered by this thing in a lake. She saw this horrific vision, felt herself get like stabbed in the dream. And I rolled for it, and so she woke up just in hysterics. She woke up with just this uncontrollable manic laughter that lasted like 3 hours.
Oh.
It worked for me because the night before, doing this, for the record, the scenario is called, what is the scenario called? I forgot what the scenario is called, but it's in the keep. It's called Amidst the Ancient Trees. It's in the Keeper's Handbook. Night before, one of the hunting parties, one of the search party was retreating, and they're just like leaving because they're too freaked out. And they'd managed to roll. Ellie managed to roll like a hard charm roll and fluttered her eyelashes and had the guy stay to help out. And I'm thinking, God damn it, now I've got to run an NPC. And luckily, Ellie's manic laughter in the morning spooked him off. So I was like, phew, got out of that one.
Yeah.
Take the win so you can get them.
Yeah, no. Yeah, you do, especially in Cthulhu. I think you'd like, there's 2 games you'd like, and we're going to go back to mysteries in a second, because we did kind of divert. 2 games you'd like is a game that my friend, I think you met him as well at the club, called Ben, introduced me to, which was called Knights Back at Black Agents, which is Jason Bourne fights vampires. Like that's the.
Cool.
So you play like spies, like you play different like types of spy. So you could be like the face or like the explosives expert. I played like the tech guy, but you can
also kind of heist crew setup.
Yeah, but obviously, and then basically you uncover the conspiracy about vampires and the fact that vampires have always existed. That's quite cool. And if you like rogues, you need to play Blades in the Dark. Like
Blades in the Dark, sure. Blades in
the Dark is John Harper. It is D6's, I believe. I haven't played it in a while, but it's so much fun. Again, there's playbooks, so you play like certain. That's the criminal element. So if you think that Knights Black Agents is the world where the government are like trying to fight vampires, and Knights Black Agents is like this like steampunky, inspired by Victorian London, but ghosts can run about, and there's people who collect dead bodies so ghosts don't appear. There's like big electric gates that stop ghosts from appearing, like, and basically you're a criminal gang trying to take over the Duskfold, and you're just trying to survive. And my character in that is called a Cutter, and he's just like the brute basically. And like I've unlocked the ability to punch ghosts in the face. It's good. It's a useful ability. Yeah, because we ended up going to like the Death Wardens, like because there's like a faction element to it as well. There's not just your characters, like you're grouped together, like form a faction in the city, and like you have different like faction issues with other factions if you do certain things. It's really fun. And very cinematic, and I think one of the cool things about Blades in the Dark, I think you'll like this too, is like you start in the scenario, so you don't plan. Like there's no planning.
Okay.
You start in the scenario, you get dropped in it. You get like an entry thing. So you decide how you're going to enter. Is it through subterfuge? Is it through force? Is it through disguise? And then once you're in it, what you do is you do these things called flashbacks. And you can literally, at a certain point, go, right, I flash back to 5 days ago.
Oh, I've read that. I've read something like this somewhere. Yeah.
I flash back to 5 days ago where I was casing this joint out and I flirted with one of the scullery maids, and she told me that if I ever wanted to come see her again, there's this entrance that she'll meet me at. And she told me she showed me where it was. And I know where that is now, so I'm going to use that as my exit point. Like,
oh, I like that. Okay.
But the flashbacks can be anything from like modern history to like 5 seconds ago. I want to flashback to 5 seconds ago where I was a bit unsure about what was happening, so I took something and prepared and had it in my sleeve. To when I was 15 years old, I met this.
I first learned how to pick locks.
Well, I think one of the ways one of our guys used it was when I was 15 years old. I worked for this guy. I worked for this rival gang leader, and he kicked me out of the gang. But he told me that he owed me a favor, and like you still roll for it. You have to roll like certain things, and yeah, he was really successful.
Right, yeah, that is deeply cinematic.
It's really cinematic, and one thing that Night's Black Agents has that's quite cinematic is it has like I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically one of your skills. You can do like a cinematic thing with it where you automatically succeed once a session, and you can like is it POA or something? Or P I can't remember, but basically because I'm so good at this thing, I cannot fail at it. So I'm going to take my cinematic moment and I'm going to hack into this thing and not fail. But you have to like describe it in detail, and like so they're the two very cinematic systems.
The 7C is very similar to that in that he gives you just loads of tools to do really cool stuff. To briefly plug my own mystery board game recommendation, I cannot recommend enough Sherlock Holmes Consulting Detective.
Yeah, you love that.
I love that game. Everyone I have showed it to has loved it. It's so absorbing. I won't kind of go into bit. If you want a game where you can solve a mystery and it's just a full fun night in, it's not replayable, but it's deeply satisfying, and it's the kind of game that you want to like put in a frame. You want to remember it fondly.
Yeah. So if we talk about the mystery genre, mystery genre is something that people are just oddly fascinated with in all forms. Like, manga's done it, anime's done it, classics have done it, literature does it like quite frequently. What is it about mystery stories that gets the blood pumping, gets people going, you know what, this is fucking dope, I love this?
We all like to. I think it depends on what flavor of mystery we're looking at, because it's such, as you said, it's a genre that's been around for so long, and it has so many archetypes. There's so many horror, it's like action. There are so many things to look at. I think a big part of it is, on the one hand, you've got mysteries that, if you pay attention to, you can solve. Some of the Sherlock Holmes stories are like this. Not all of them are. Definitely not all of them are. A lot of Agatha Christie books are like this. The fair play mystery kind of fell out of fashion in like the 50s, and has become replaced with more like character-driven mysteries, but is now coming back into fashion. The most recent of which is a book called The Maid, which is about a neurodivergent maid working at a hotel who's really like detail orientated, so she's able to like pick up on these little things and is sort of piecing together a mystery at a hotel. That one it's kind of been a resurgence of the fair play mystery. So in that case, the appeal is playing along and thinking to yourself and getting to put yourself in the character's shoes and think about it, and then you get the lovely reveal at the end where you go, of course. On the other side, you have mysteries that are more plot and character driven, and those, I think, the defining feature, if you don't have fair play element to keep people going, you've got to have a compelling character. You've got to have a compelling character, you've got to have a compelling world. And people love detectives. We love the detective archetype. Detective Archetype has existed for ages, and it's such a broad archetype, and we love a detective. We love detective characters. We love these characters who can enter this world that's in chaos, bring us and be a semblance of order, and show the patterns. Humans love patterns, and that can kind of walk into these situations and get a read on them and can reveal hidden things. The idea of secrets being revealed and that being a driver for people is as old, I want to say, as fiction is, as literature itself. People want answers, and
well, even if you look at myths, if you look at mythology,
exactly,
it's to give you an answer of how does lightning happen, like why does lightning happen? Well, God does it because some of the oldest stories in the literally the oldest story in the book, like how was the earth made? Well, here you go. Here's a bunch of stories that solve that mystery for you.
I think it's also because mystery, if you want to write an effective mystery, you could say this generally about all fiction if you want to get real sort of into the weeds of how fiction works. I think mystery is one of the more structurally fixed styles of story, and there are going to be people who know way more about literature than I do who are going to get real angry. That's my take on it, and I think it makes it accessible to people. It's there isn't a guide on how to structure an effective cyberpunk novel or a fantasy novel. But I think you can read dozens of mysteries and they all kind of follow the same beats. Doesn't mean everybody gets it right. My least favorite genre of mystery are ones where I can read 2/3 of the book, and then the last third is when everything gets put together and nothing that's happened in the 2/3 matters at all.
Yeah.
That happens more than I would like when I read longer ones.
I was going to say, that's kind of... I think what I was about to say isn't true, but I'll see what you think. Have you read any Haruki Murakami books?
Haven't.
So Haruki Murakami is
a great deal of locked rooms, hasn't he?
Yeah, and he's got a lot of his stories form amongst there's a core mystery to them. So Dance, which is my personal favorite of his, is about where did this guy's girlfriend go? She just disappeared one day and left him, and then he got a phone call from her. And he goes on and goes to meet her again and find her. There's the colorist Tazuru Tazaki, which is really interesting in the fact that basically it's a young man. Well, he's not young anymore, but he used to have a lot of friends, and then they suddenly all stopped talking to him, and he doesn't.
My brother read that one. Yeah.
And then I think one of my second favorite one, Dance is my favorite because it's the first one I read. My friend told me to read it, so I read it, and it's my favorite because of that. But the one that he's famous for, Kafka on the Shore, it has some of the best quotable moments I've ever read. And when you go through the storm, you won't know what's in it. You won't know how you got through or what you did to get through, but you will know that you are not the same person who entered the storm when you emerge.
Sure.
And it's there's so many quotable moments in it, and that has a really messed up mystery to it as well, and they're just so intriguing, because the characters aren't investigators in the fact of Sherlock Holmes or Locke from Lamora. They're not up here fixed and ready to go.
This isn't their world.
But there's still that core mystery that's really important and interesting. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I find mysteries so exciting. Even for example, Persona 5, the game Persona 5. The mystery of that is well, why? Why?
Yeah, and Persona 4 I think is even more aggressively a small town mystery. Yeah. It's a Scooby gang, is how I describe Persona 4.
Yeah, no, definitely. Like Persona 3 is about facing the mystery that is death. Like, can you accept it? Hence why they have like the guns that they put to their heads to summon their personas.
Symbolic.
Persona 4's the mystery, hence the glasses, like to see clearly and to seek truth.
And 5 is almost more on the nose, where you have like Arsène Lupin getting call outs, and in spoilers for Persona 5 Strikers, you have like Valjean,
yeah,
which was awesome, by the way.
Yeah.
I love that. Was so good.
Yeah,
I
like
never would have predicted Valjean. I was
Yeah.
so happy.
yeah, like and like if you and like Goemon Ishikawa, like for Yusuke, like you and the fact that their thing is about the mask that you put on and like the mystery of like why do we put on
They're all based on rebels. Going back to, again, everyone loves rogues.
Yeah,
and
everybody loves rogues and the mystery that they bring. It's almost like rogues bring the mystery to
and because you said there's this image of rogues walking in shadow, and that's where like a lot of the answers lie, and sort of skulking, discovering things that maybe were meant to stay hidden. I think it is very interesting to have a character who is driven by truth, not necessarily justice, not necessarily doing the right thing. It holds truth very, very highly. I think L is one of the best detective characters. He is
by far
so aggressively grey area. Like, L is a terrible person, but he's really good at what he does.
Yeah, like you watch him literally.
His motives, his motives for doing that are never fully described.
And
by L does it,
and you kind of get the feeling at some points like a normal like hero would do that because it's the right thing to do, and sometimes with L he says that, and then you get the feeling that no, I think you want to win. Like, I don't think you care.
Hard yes.
Like I don't think like at some point you're like I don't think you care. I think you just want to win. Like
want to win it. Just want to prove you're the smartest person in the room.
Yeah, and then but then he does things that do prove that like no. Like there is a line. Like there is definitely
exactly. and his motives are so grey, because similar to Sherlock Holmes, he talks a big game about how it's just cases are the only thing that interest him, but then you see these glimpses of like, no, you are actually emotionally affected by what's going on. You don't want innocent people to get hurt. I think that is such a shade of the detective character, and going back to like noir mysteries. You have these characters who walk that really fine line and are quite happy to sort of, they'll kind of bust in and go, you better start giving me answers or you're going to eat desk. Those kind of things. And they're not brainiacs, they're not cerebral, but they're doing the same job. They're there to kind of break the case open, and everybody wants answers. And if there is a case that is appealing enough, and if we want to see justice brought on someone, or if you just want an answer to cryptic puzzle, then we are happy to have characters who are willing to end laws and are willing to look past certain niceties in order to get it done.
See, I think that's I'm gonna go out on a limb here and put this on the internet. I kind of hate Batman. I don't like him. Batman's not my friend. Like I prefer Superman in many different ways, but because I like him, like
Big Blue.
Yeah, but like obviously Green Lantern's my favorite ever because he's just both a terrible and a great person at the same time.
Hal Jordan Green
Lantern is like by far. But like it is the thing with Batman, isn't it? Like Batman is, even though he is cerebral, and he is helpful in that way. He is the dark reflection of like, I want truth above all things, and I want justice above all things. So if this guy goes to prison,
it needs to be beaten into submission.
If this guy goes to prison with like 2 broken knees, a few broken ribs and possible internal bleeding, we do that. We move. And then I train my teenage son to do the same thing. like
talking about, I'm not going to sort of go into Batman because I have a lot of thoughts on Batman, but a really nice, I watched a overly sarcastic productions video about detectives. It's very good. She talks about Batman, and there's another video where she talks about Nemesis, and she talks about Batman, and her point about Nemesis is, if you have a character like the Joker who commits crimes with no motive, it makes him the perfect nemesis for a character who is meant to be the world's greatest detective. Because it's not only a dichotomy of morals, it's a dichotomy of methods.
And logic, yeah.
And they rightfully swung round to the point of overusing the Joker ruins the character. He's not that interesting.
Yeah. No, I totally get that, and I get the fact that the Batman is just like that. Like, he's the one we hold up to modern standards. If we look at Sherlock Holmes, is the prototype. He's the first one that we had, that ultra detective.
Yeah, the armchair detective.
Yeah, and then we've got the like almost steroid pumped version of that in Batman. Yeah. And then we're getting more and more like interesting characters come out that are trying to solve those mysteries. And I think you're right, that thing about answers and like solving the mystery and having the answers and the world being a little less foggy is nice.
Yeah, I find Sherlock Holmes stories, they are my comfort blanket. People will like reread Harry Potter for the same effect, or they'll reread like fantasy series. For me, it's Sherlock Holmes. If I crack open a Sherlock Holmes pastiche, it gives me that cozy feeling in my chest. I know it's a good one.
It's why we love like crime scene procedurals and hospital shows as well.
Yeah.
Like
they're episodic, and there is a structure, and you know by the end of it things are going to be all right, and you know by the end of it Holmes will have cracked the mystery and the world will be a little bit clearer. And also, just as a way to join what we talk about together, there's a very good trilogy of books called the Cthulhu Case Books, which are Sherlock Holmes versus Cthulhu, by James Lovegrove, who writes some of my favorite Sherlock Holmes pastiches. If you want like a good modern look at the mythos and a pretty interesting version of Holmes, those are good to check out. Those are good fun. I read them. I read 3 in a month, I think. I devoured those books.
Oof. But if you love something, you do just go.
Exactly. Yeah.
I wish I could. Like, I find reading hard at the minute because of the job and everything, and the boy.
Fair. No, it's totally fair, man.
But yeah,
nothing. It's literally nothing to be ashamed of. Like, it happens.
But yeah, like, I don't know. Like, even when like everything we think about, like popular TV, Suits was like a mystery in like itself as well. Like the TV show Suits was like the legal proceedings. Mm-hmm. How are they going to get through this? How are we going to figure out how to win? So it had like that battle element to it that we love so much as well. Like I think that's the thing about the mystery as well, that people finding the answer to it, but it's also the battle, like the battle of wits and the chess game. The reason why we love Death Note as baby's first anime, as you once described it to me.
It is yes, baby's first anime.
But the reason we love it is because of that battle between L and Light. Yeah. Like if that wasn't there, if that wasn't as good, and that we admit as fans of Death Note now that we're older, like that one of the reasons why the latter half of the series falls off is because the battle between L and Light isn't there anymore. Like
L, it is better when it is focused on those two, and I think there is an intense satisfaction in watching two very, very intelligent people play off against each other. It's why I will avidly defend Sherlock Holmes: A Game of Shadows as a really, really good Sherlock Holmes movie. Sherlock Holmes: Game of Shadows is better than a lot of BBC Sherlock. Fight me. And it's just... yeah,
that's the one with Moriarty in it, isn't it?
Yeah, Jared Harris, who I think is the best on-screen Moriarty. I think he's astounding in it. And I think that film does such a good job of showing just how ahead of the game these guys have to be. And you have the very literal chess match at the end, how it translates into fight and everything. And it's, you can talk about characters like Cyclops from X-Men, who are aggressively like puppet masters and know how to play people and know how to, that's their thing, is they're able to have this chessboard view of the world and react accordingly.
I love Cyclops for that. Like, his ability to lead, and like everybody knows that, because the thing is, everybody knows as well. They're like, I know that Cyclops is asking me to do something that is unreasonable, but because he's asking me, I'm going to do it. Like,
so you have these people who just see 8 steps ahead, and they make very intriguing characters, almost more than they would if they were just really, really strong or really, really good at fighting, because it comes with, I feel, more layers. If you have a brilliantly intelligent character, you can apply it in some really, really interesting ways, and they can be lacking in some really, really interesting ways.
Definitely. But yeah, no. I'm aware it's getting late. I am aware that we're heading towards time. I usually try and make these an hour and a half. So yeah, thanks for coming on, Luke. Thanks for coming and speaking to me about your probably mastermind topics, like now rogues and mystery novels and Cthulhu and stuff.
You can't see, but this is my little marionette that I'm puppeting. No, Addison, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's good to talk to you, man. Our D&D stuff was astounding, and I remember it fondly. Mordai is one of my favorite characters that I've made. Not to be controversial, tabletop RPGs are fun. My advice to people are out there listening to this, and like me, combat is their least favorite part of Dungeons and Dragons, check out Call of Cthulhu. And if you want to do some horror stuff, you doesn't have to be scary. You could do Pulp Cthulhu, where it's a lot more kind of actiony. If you want games that encourage mystery and slowing it down and thinking about it, Call of Cthulhu is a great one to check out. I'm super pumped to play Vampire as like a character-focused one. I think and again, a great way for people to explore darker shades of their personality. And I'm excited to explore 7th Sea because I love sword fights. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's been an absolute pleasure to be here, man. Thank you very much for asking me. This has been really cool.
It's been really cool, and we will definitely try and talk more. Like I will be a better friend, I promise.
My guy, you have so much on your plate. I do not hold it against you whatsoever.
But yeah, for those of you listening, I hope you've enjoyed my conversation with Luke P about just all things rogues, the grey. We've delved into the Mindpalace, as is the title of this episode. I hope you like the talking heads format now. That's a bit more like, if you're not watching via video and you're just listening via voice, I'm sorry you missed my fantastic beard and my actual Persona 3 t-shirt. Actually, I've started speaking about Persona 3, okay. And I've got like the Memento Mori t-shirt on. And yeah, hang on, I've just unplugged myself. All that's left to say really is, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever you are, I hope you're safe, I hope you are well, and I hope you have all the happiness in the world. I've been Addison, your favourite friendly furball who hangs around the internet, and I'll see you next time. Peace.
Bye.